Carolyn Dube here, and today I'm going to share with you my 3 simple steps for using any art or technique book as a jumping off place for play. Mary Beth sent me her latest book called Stencil Girl, and I'm going to show you how I use this process with this book. So step 1 is to find the thing that grabs your attention the most. And for me, as I'm looking at this, it is the Wax and Waning encaustic chapter, simply because I've been playing with some encaustic lately, so I'm very curious about it. I'm very intrigued by it. Step 2 is to find what one specific thing, and it's just one thing, because there are a lot of choices in here of what I could do, but step 2 is to pick one specific thing to do. Did I mention one specific thing? And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do the scratching into the wax and then using an oil paint on top of it. And step 3 is to go and play and try it. Well, now I'm into the play part, and I'm going to give you a little look into what goes through my head when I'm playing with something. Keep in mind, everything that I'm showing you here is very newbie to encaustic, and this may not be exactly how Mary Beth has it in her book at all, since again, I'm just picking one part as the jumping off point. Now, Mary Beth worked on like a wood substrate and that kind of thing, and I decided I wanted to work on book pages. I have no idea if this is going to be a good thing or not, if there's a reason why I shouldn't use encaustic on book pages. I'm gonna find out, but the bottom line is I am just playing here and experimenting and seeing what happens. Now, what I've got over there that I'm putting my wax in, that's a griddle purchased from Amazon, the kind of thing people use to cook with. And what it's doing is keeping my wax melted because wax needs some way to melt. I'm doing a whole bunch of these book pages right now because I have no idea what I'm gonna do exactly. Because it takes some steps, some stages, and as long as I've got everything out, I might as well give myself plenty of stuff to play with. What I'm doing right now is just using a heat tool, and apparently after you put a layer of wax on, you have to fuse it or melt it into things. I have no idea if that only works if you're doing stuff on a hard substrate like wood, if you have to do it with paper. I don't know, because I don't really know the rules to this encaustic stuff. I'm just kind of having fun playing with it and exploring it. Well, now it's time to add some color to this. So what I'm going to do is just see what color happens to be on the brush, and that's not very exciting of a color. So I'm going to grab some of the wax snaps, and these are all various colors. This one's blue, the other one in my hand is white. And what that's doing is melting some of the wax, which is going to give me the color and the pigment, and then I'm just kind of smearing it around. Gotta tell you, so far this what I'm doing isn't that exciting. We could call this borderline ugly, quite frankly. But that's okay. I'm just playing and I'm just getting started. Now, I just cleaned off my palette there because it seemed like it would get messy. So am I supposed to do that? I don't know. I just did it. I'm going to clean off this brush because it's got that sort of, got a pukey yellow color to it that I've created there. That is some kind of like wax cleaner thing that you use to clean off the brush. Maybe it would help if I did that first. I don't know. Again, I'm learning this as I go, so we'll just see. Maybe a fresh paper towel. I'll do this until it seems to wipe clear. Looks close enough to me, I'm ready to try another color. So I've got another sheet of my waxed book paper, and I've got a stencil. And this stencil has acrylic paint all over it because it's one that I use. And I wonder if that's going to be a problem with the wax. We'll find out. So I'm dipping in some of the clear wax, I'm mixing it with the red, that kind of helps, I don't know, makes it easier for me to spread, that kind of thing. And I don't know what this really looks like under there because it's not like I'm a master of encaustic or anything, so I'm going to peek and take a look, and I think I want more red there. Red's not a color I usually use, so I'm going to give a big credit to Maria there for that one. And I just learned a lesson. So I've got bright red wax on this, and I dipped it in that clear tub, and you can see where I've got some red left in there. Oops. Probably what I should do is just take the clear wax and melt it right on the palette, just like I was doing with the color stuff. And that way I won't contaminate my tub of clear wax. Oops. So everything that I'm doing here, all of my play, is really just one oops after another. Some of them work out, some of them don't, but for the most part, I'm kind of surprised with what works and what doesn't work in the end. Well, like remember I said I only had a few brushes? That red is really, really bright, and I don't want to have to clean it off every time because I'm that way. I really don't like to clean. So I think I'm going to make the one brush red, and the other brush I think is going to be pretty much all the other colors that I'm going to use. That one is fairly clean, so to use the yellow with it, I'm going to get this really, really bright yellow with this. I'm picking up little bits of the orange off the palette. That yellow doesn't really stand out there. Well, as long as I've got the yellow stuff here, I might as well add some on my junk page. This one that I started with that kind of had that ugly greenish color on it, well, now that I've got some yellow on it, it actually looks really, really nice. Now with encaustic, you're supposed to fuse between each layer of wax, so I'm going to melt this down and fuse it into the other one. And the cool part is that, you know, when wax gets hot, it runs, so I'm kind of having fun playing around with that a little bit. I noticed here when I'm doing this one, my beautiful, crisp, sharp lines that I had, they kind of all smear and smudge and blur, and, you know, that's kind of cool too. And I'm going to try with this yellow one to see if I can keep it from smudging and smearing and blurring and all those kinds of things. And when the mood strikes me, I add some color here, I add some color there. This is very much, for me, turns out a lot like painting. So the same kinds of things I would do if I was working in acrylic paint, I'm going to do it with the encaustic acting as my paint, just a very hot, melty paint. So I'm going to take this Greek key stencil and do another layer of it, and not cover the whole thing, just put a little bit here and there. And if my paint's too thick or not the right color, I'll just add a little bit more to it and experiment, just like I would do as if this was acrylic paint. So I've got that yellow on there, and I've got just a part of the Stitch a Greek border stencil on there giving me some design, and I want to add some colors to make it pop out more. So I'm going to try some blue. And I'm totally willing to try and experiment with things because this is a piece of book text. This is nothing expensive, this is nothing fancy, and I am just playing. I am letting myself experiment and get to know a little bit more of how I react to how I feel about using the encaustics. I'm not following a lot of rules here, I'm just kind of doing whatever sort of strikes me. Again, have to fuse those layers together, so I added the blue, and I'm still trying to preserve that yellow to keep the design of that there. We'll see if I hang on to that by the end of this. I'm going to fuse that pink layer onto the red, and along the way, this is creating all sorts of texture. It's just, these are very, very touchable, three-dimensional. Well, now I'm going to get a paint stick ready to go. These are oil paint in a stick, and they get a skin over them. So I'm just peeling off the skin. I'm not very graceful about this because I don't use these that often, so I'm excited too that I'm pulling out some stuff that I had. I'm using some kind of metal tool that I don't know what it's from, but it's got a sharp point on it, and I'm scratching into my wax. Next thing is by using that paint stick over it, and then I'm going to buff it off. I'm hoping that the paint stick sticks into where I've scribbled and drawn, but then I kind of liked how it looks smearing the color around, so I started doing more of that. And I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just kind of exploring and playing, and I'll see what happens. And, you know, maybe I'll do... You know, I had a hard time picking which color I was going to do with this, so I decided to go with the gold. And it's pretty funny when you use a color that you don't usually use, how odd it feels when you don't know your go-tos for it. So I'm going to scratch in a couple of places, kind of playing up on the design of the Greek key here. And then I'm going to add some gold metallic paint stick to this. And man, did this stuff make me happy. It was like adding glitter to something. So I had to keep adding it in more places, smearing it around. And then it was time to fuse it all down. So out came the heat gun, and I'm going to fuse these two down. I have no idea if I'm supposed to fuse after using the oil paint stick thing on it or not. Beats me, but I'm going to fuse it down and we'll see what happens. Well, one thing that I already knew that I liked about encaustics was how you can get the depth and the layering. So I am just coming in with some clear wax here, and I am just burying everything that I've got so far in that. It's going to get cloudy here for a minute, but it will clear up some. Notice I said some. And the next thing I'm going to need to do is, you guessed it, I got to fuse these things together. So I'm just going to wait till it gets melty. Now, I don't know how much I'm supposed to fuse, if it just gets a little shiny or if I need to make it runny like a swimming pool. But I do know I'm not going to let something as crazy as not knowing all the rules keep me from having some playtime. Well, now comes the ugly piece of paper that I had that was just, I kept kind of adding things to. And now I'm adding bits and pieces. I'm experimenting around with it. This was my throwaway, my junk piece, the one I liked the least. And yes, you can see where this is leading up, can't you? This ends up being the one that I love the most from this. I was blown away by how crisp and bright and clear that was when I stenciled the bits on there. And then, of course, well, I had the paint sticks out. I might as well play with those and see what happens. And all of a sudden, I'm getting layers and colors. I'm scratching into it and rubbing in one of the oil sticks in there. And as I'm playing, I'm getting more familiar with encaustics. I'm getting a chance to experiment. And since I did these on paper, I can use these in an art journal. I can use them for a card. Who knows what I'm going to use them for? But I will definitely share what I use them for with everybody on my blog and here on YouTube. Now, this video is getting kind of long compared to one of my usual videos, and I've got the whole cleanup process of how you get the wax off the stencil, which also led to me getting some great prints. So that's going to be in my next YouTube video. If you don't want to miss it, I'd love it if you subscribe to my YouTube channel. So after watching this video, it's probably very clear to you that I am in no way an expert on encaustic, seeing as how I know very few of the rules that go with this. But I hope that you will also take away from this that you don't have to know the rules to play. It doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, it's probably more fun if it's not perfect. Of course, over on my blog at A Colorful Journey, I've got links to everything that I've used here if that helps you out if you're interested in giving encaustics a whirl. Thanks for watching and for being a part of this colorful journey.